I am live. I'm reading Joan Marshall Grant's book, Speaking from the Heart. It's a book about ethics, reincarnation, and what it means to be human, edited by Nicola Bennett, Jane Law, and Sophia Rossoff. I'm here in chapter 19. This book was written, as I said, by people who knew her, but also by her personally, and these are her jottings and notes. Chapter 19, Ethics for Living. The first extract shows Joan at her most sketchy, mapping out ideas for an essay about money. At the beginning, she plans to write about the use and misuse of money, but do it personally, she exhorts herself. Money should be a symbol of how many you can protect. The terrible division caused by money. Drive it past your neighbor's house, all the lonely who cannot love neighbor because of showing off. You can't take it with you. Since everyone, especially the rich, suffer extreme trauma, not because their body has died, but because all their labels and toys have been taken away. But think of the rich man cannot enter heaven. Consider the shock. Everything belongs to someone else. If one was not prepared to give it away, it is terrifying to look at one's cold body and see the people appointing the dibs. My necklace, my farm, my castle, suddenly ripped away. I found myself naked and alone. Everything in my whole current life. I'm mummy's little girl, I'm your father, I am a senator, etc. Or I am very, very pretty and clever. Suddenly stripped away. Suddenly you are naked, naked with no wraps to put on, no bikinis or tiaras, just plain naked. I am me. And the shiver comes in. The shiver when the cold wind of circumstance blows very harsh, and there is no solace, no protection, no justification except the small warm wind of often ephemeral affection. I would rather you here than not here. I'm a little less lonely because of you. I'm a little less afraid because I can feel the palm of your hand against mine, or the touch of your fingers on my forehead. The rich man cannot enter heaven. Heaven brings being the place where no concealment is desired. Really meant the rich man will not enter heaven. He will not give what he previously failed to give. He refuses to rid himself of the debts he has self-acquired by his failure to do what he could with what he had got. As his non-fulfillment of these daily exchanges of available energy increases, so do his riches accumulate a weight. For few things are heavier than gold except the lead which lines coffins, and will continue to do so until he uses this energy, which quite literally weighs him down into his 3D personality, or rather a series of personalities, for usually several personalities misdirected in the same direction are required before some of the out of the ordinary aspect manifests. The billionaire is as much an example of unused potential as a musical genius is an example of creative energy applied in a particular line of endeavor. Neither the billionaire need be a bad character any more than the musical genius is ipso facto a good character. But their acquired skill, acquired during several personalities, or their wealth hoarded during successive lifetimes, will be a burden to them unless they decide to employ their potential energy in a creative manner. Such person might have used their benefit. The aphorism, those who pay death duties have failed in their life duties. Eat fat is the same failure to use the energy available to you. To keep fat stashed away in your body is just as obscene as to keep money in saving account. Fat on the belly and money in the bank are manifestations of the same ineptitude in the employment of energy. By savings account, I mean money not doing or even earning anything, sock under the bed. Do not fear food. do not fear money, but do most rightly fear the capacity not to make full and immediate use of the energies which are immediately available, i.e., instead of gaining an extra pound, ask, whose suitcase can I lift? When you gain an extra dollar, ask, who needs it to help him see the direction in which to grow? From a letter to Sophia Rossoff. Have just had one of those utterly clear insights while doing laundry, which I'm trying to get into words before it goes out of focus. Johnny's, my grandson's, remarked, age 4, Joan, I have discovered money. There are a lot of sad people in the world, and if you give them a penny, they smile. What he had still retained, and still does, bless him, is that money is neither black nor white, has no real value, however much idiotic Homo sapiens stash away the noble metal of gold into holes in the ground, Fort Knox, etc., but is energy without direction, like a power line which does nothing until someone translates it into a direction by plugging it into an electric blanket to make someone purr, or an ECT machine to make a patient even more terrified than he is already, etc., etc. There is a plethora of vivid images to illustrate both directions. Both directions. But the basic principle is, how many people are happier because you were born? A principle as inevitable as gravity, etc. Oh, instead of realizing the Rodin restatement in Eyes of Horus, strive for happiness as other men strive for power, is one of the basic truths.
One of the fastest growing property strategies in the UK right now is something called serviced accommodation. Serviced accommodation.
Let's have it quiet. Instead of realizing the Rodin restatement on Eyes of Horus, strive for happiness as other men strive for power, is one of the basic truths. It has become virtuous to do the exact opposite by saving, which in fact is a ghastly example of putting off until tomorrow what you really must do today. Money has become an end in itself, which is as foolish as claiming that electricity is an aim to itself. But what money is a potential power, which when plugged in produces either happiness or increased loneliness. Even in its most minimal aspect, money can be an emollient, so that the grit of daily life living does not wear down the enamel to the nerve, or at least not today. If only people could realize that every penny they have is a source, or at least a potential source of happiness. And, as you well know, even better than I do, happiness is being at the center of oneself, and therefore in accord with every other self-centered individual, whether he happens to have 2 legs or 4, fins or feathers. This poor planet would be a great deal less sad. If only people would realize that money is a source of provoking happiness and stop trying to do good works or one-upmanship, etc., and even more, above all, trying to demonstrate the exact opposite principle, that money used to create anti-happiness is always improperly used, i.e., invested in the wrong direction. The idea that money which breeds money is a good idea is as idiotic as male and female increase the population and thereby the potential cheap labor force or cannon fodder, etc. But if we could all get back to the basic principle of how can I translate the energy at my disposal into happiness, consider what a cozy planet this could be. One must try to make those who are in charge of the potential energy to use it in the happiness creating direction. One must somehow teach them that the purpose of the exercise is to increase the sum of human happiness, and not the imaginary goal of human efficiency, expediency, etc. Perhaps one should make it easier for them to at least experience a nibble at this good bread by pointing out that no happiness has ever been felt by anyone anywhere, at least in my tiny 40,000 year framework, except as an echo, an interchange with some individual. Maybe the shape of that individual happened to be a plant or a greyhound or even a sad, sad elm tree. And again, back to money. If only they would recognize the fun, and fun is the body's recognition of the centers on being well-being, which they have not only the means to demonstrate, wrong word, I mean bringing uncolored energy into the 3D activity, but for lack of which they will wither on the dry branches of themselves, like rowan berries, which even hungry birds did not accept when the snow was deep. Money is energy, and when directing this energy, one should accept the responsibility for doing so, and one is doing see what one is doing to the limit of one's vision today. Tomorrow one may see further. The exact opposite of needing stronger glasses may be why we lose ours so often. If that direction is to increase the sum of human, not in the pompous sense of Homo sapiens, happiness, then okay. If not, then take another viewpoint. Seek for happiness as other men seek for power. Positive goodness. That good is not just the absence of evil. The negative confusion has caused many to believe that goodness can be achieved merely by avoiding being bad. This has allowed the initiative to go to the opposition. We must now be positively good, for given a chance, goodness can be as infectious, as transmittable as evil. Although the problem seems overwhelming because of the overpopulation, remember that there are now the means by which many ears can hear and eyes see. We are no longer circumscribed by the distance a voice can carry, or eyes can see. The ethics can spread as fast as a virus. Accumulated hate and fear was the real cause of the 1918 flu, the conglomerate of the pain and hate and fear generated by the armies. I think, I can only glimpse this concept, but it is coming through fast, that there can be a benign transmitting, which could be as infectious as a virus. It is essential to stress positive goodness. Remember, the ancient wisdom has not been written because originally it was always hand to hand, the line of torches, etc. And such fragments which have survived have been distorted. Hinduism, Buddhism, etc. are not ancient wisdom. In our type of human history, they are equivalent to 40 seconds in 24 hours. The records which have survived stem from a very recent period, the last 3 to 4,000 years, during which very little light shone through the self-created smog of man's stupidity. Small example. Instead of only not throwing empty beer bottles in a picnic place, clear up other people's litter. Instead of why should I clear up their mess, consider what would this place be more close to the pattern if the paper was burned. Obviously, yes, so put a spade in the boot of the car. What can I contribute instead of what must I not do? This positive, good attitude applies also to medicine. Instead of x-rays to destroy cancer cells, search for the good factor, which normally would keep the energy working correctly. Disease-resistant plants instead of pesticides. The young are longing for this positive direction, but they do not yet realize that peace is not just the absence of war. Guilt. Just as pain should be only the call for help from the physical body, when the whisper of mild discomfort has been ignored, so has guilt been equally misunderstood. Just as discomfort should call the attention of all other aspects of personality to adjust a need of the physical body, which may be something so three-dimensional as a thorn in the foot, or something which has an unnatural factor acquired by an earlier supraphysical body, such as my allergy to garlic. So should the twinges of guilt, the still small voice of conscience, be an indication that the psyche knows that its vital energy is being misdirected. And by misdirected, I mean used in a way which is not in accord with the evolution of the integral. So all methods of therapy which are aimed at mocking guilt by sharing one's guilt with other people We all do this, and more so why worry? Are ineffective and often destructive. Guilt must be clearly defined so that the guilt of acting against the evolutionary growth is not confused with the pseudo guilt of acting at variance with social mores, which seldom have any real relationship with basic ethics. To produce a permissive society in which anything goes is as foolish as to numb the physical body to the natural warnings which alert it to defend itself against corporal damage. For instance, a body suffering the early stages of leprosy may have such ineffective nerve endings in the hands that it cannot receive the natural warning against excessive heat. So therapy directed at illuminating guilt can cause the personality exceedingly to suffer. For although well-intentioned, being aimed at the false mores, which have been rampant for several centuries, it can and too often does cut off the personality from the innate wisdom of its own integral, laboriously acquired through the millennia. A personality which is failing in its primary task of growing through empathy with other personalities will inevitably feel lonely. This is not a matter of sentiment, but a factor as fundamental to the human animal as it would be the reaction of a salmon if removed from its natural spawning habitat, a river, and was trying to swim upstream on parched grass. Pseudo alleviations of the condition of loneliness have been popular for some hundreds of years. Us against the others. Whether these arbitrary divisions are religious, national, or political, or even more ridiculous subdivisions attributed to the age of the current body one happens to be using or the color of one's skin. But none of these placebos are effective except in the very short term or the very myopic view. Guilt is a very personal communication between personality and integral. And if this communication is ignored, when only a mild hint is required for a readjustment of attitudes, the results can be as unpleasant as is the whisper of discomfort, which ignored causes a cracked tibia to try to bear weight, which turns this minor injury into a compound fracture. The false comfort of we are all in the same boat does not cork the planks or defer even by a moment the boat's submergence. The exposure of one's discordant aspects does not make them more harmonious, any more than communal nudity causes bellies to flatten or breasts to cease to sag. Much more important, the knowledge that one's co-sufferers are similarly affected cannot cure, although it may produce a brittle and very temporary palliative, the basic malaise of loneliness. Positive loving, which is the opposite of loneliness, can be achieved only by the exercise of empathy. Love is never blind, although all too many emotions which masquerade as love are dependent on exceedingly dark glasses. Jealousy. You have a free choice here and now, no matter how often you have made the wrong choice which has made you self-conditioned, self-brainwashed into behaving in a particular way, to choose to see anyone you meet as an opportunity to grow, and therefore to evolve. For evolution implies growth. Or you can choose to see not only anyone, but everyone as a potential enemy, a rival who will take away even a little that you think you have. Think is in quotes advisedly, because of course no one owns anyone, which fact is sometimes more difficult for them to accept than no one owns anything. You can't protect what you don't have, and if you got it, it doesn't need protecting. One must somehow make them understand that love is never and cannot be, by its very nature, exclusive. So that was chapter 19. Chapter 20 is the most basic basics. Starts with death. I read that another time.